So what pinball table would be complete without some rails or ramps to go over? And I kind of use those terms somewhat synonymously. There, it's just an extra layer that the ball can go over anything else that you've currently got on here, and it's actually one of the few things that you don't really need to put any properties in for. All we're going to do is kind of assemble this and give it the right custom classes and whatnot. So let's start by calling this Rail 1, and visually, it looks like what you're seeing right here, okay? And that's actually going to be the kind of inner rail. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this and quickly switch that over to Rail 2, give it a name, and boy, does that look funny. But if you kind of assemble them correctly, you get something more like this. And that gives you an idea of basically the railing that will keep the ball inside of here. And you can tell that our ball is maybe about half of the distance between where these two rails are, which makes it relatively simple for the ball to make its way up there. You're not going to hit it every time, but 1 out of 3 times you kind of shoot for it, you're going to make it up in there. Certainly the smaller or the closer together these rails are, the harder it gets to send your ball up that way. So, if you want to really frustrate people, make a very thin ramp. But obviously we need to set up our custom class properties over here. This is just going to be rail, and let's go ahead and do that from our other one over there. Oh, okay, select it that way. And rail, okay. And then, of course, let's go back over and give it a physics body. And this is going to be, you guessed it, an alpha mask. So the physics body for this is perfectly just around every part of that rail. Same thing over here. Oh, but you know what? I forgot to do one of the most important things, which is toggle off dynamic, allows rotation and affected by gravity. Let's do that on that one. And you can go ahead and set your Z position up to 110, but code-wise, when the kit sees that there's something of the rail object type, it's going to go ahead and set that or hard code in that Z position anyway. So it doesn't really matter, but when you are kind of arranging your things in the scene, you probably want to see that this is above everything else. So you can see when I bring this over here, it's going to be visually above our other kind of table objects. And because we've set this to rail, and let me just get right into place here, the ball by default is going to ignore the rail, okay? It's going to go right through it because this is intended to be something that is above the main table. And obviously you can see if the ball did collide with this rail right away, you're never going to start the game. It's never going to get out of the plunger over here. So what happens is it's ignoring it through most of the gameplay until we run into an invisible sprite of a particular custom class that is going to kind of take the ball and the rail, actually what it's going to do is it's going to take the ball's physics contact mask and adjust that as well as its collision mask, and it's going to do that for all the table objects as well, and essentially kind of turn off the ball being able to interact with everything else, so then it's only interacting with, you guessed it, the rail, and that way you can slide around here, and then we'll have another invisible kind of trigger for sending the ball back down into the kind of main area. And it's a very convincing and reliable effect. So let's go ahead and continue setting this up. Next thing we're going to grab is yet again another color sprite. And let's go ahead and name this RailEntrance. Name is not as important though as the custom class, which is entrance, which is far more important. And then after you've done that, go over here to your physics definition. We could go square. I tend to kind of like bounding circle for these entrances, and you can see a little circle making it up now. And then of course let's toggle these off, and I'm going to take the color of it all the way on, the opacity of it all the way on down, and now we'll put this wherever we want. I think I just made it thinner than it should have been. I think I just scaled that when I was dragging it. Okay, let's take a step back here. I'll just move it this way. So I'm going to put this entrance right over here. And remember, this is the main guy that is in control of setting the ball onto these other layers, and it is not going to hurt you to be doubly sure that that happens, because a lot of things are happening at once when that shift is made, and the ball could be going really, really fast. So I would even put a couple of these in here just to make sure that it really triggers that when it gets over to here, that ball is definitely now only paying attention to the rails and not paying attention to the table objects. Otherwise, what would happen? You know, it would just bump up against this table object right here and collide on back down again. Now, there's a rail entrance and, you guessed it, a rail exit. So let's just go ahead and copy this guy out and slowly bring it up over to here. And what we're going to do is give this a name of rail exits, and more importantly, the custom class, which is going to be rail exit. Okay, now ball goes over here, loops back around. When it comes across the rail exit, that's the guy that sends it back down, well, in theory, into the main world here and collidable with your table objects again. All right, now what if you didn't give the ball enough of an impulse to make it all the way up over to here and around? Well, then it's going to go back down again, and if you don't have another exit over here, then potentially it's just going to slide on back down. And remember, the ball is still considering itself on the rail and ignoring every other table object, and it's just going to go on down all past all this stuff, even ignoring the flippers, and down into the drain. So we have to be sure that we copy out our rail exit and put it over there. And on down we go. And if you want to make this even a little bit bigger than it currently is, that's not going to hurt it. So that way you're kind of just doubly sure that ball is going to come across that. And that is all you have to do to make a one-way ramp. And of course, visually we should add a little bit more inside of here. So let's go and grab another sprite over this way. I've got an image in here called Rail Path 1. That's the guy. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a name, but it really doesn't need one. I mean, I think a name's always a good idea. It doesn't actually need a custom class, because this is just going to be, some artwork that is going to help make it seem like that ramp is a bit more convincing. And I'm going to give this a zPosition of 100, so you can see it's now on top of those other table objects. And but that'll end up being visually below the ball. And if you ever kind of need a refresher on the Z depth of your items when the ball goes kind of into ramp mode here, you can go over here to your game scene. And in the code, you see up at the top here that there's a certain depth at certain times for things. So you can see that normally your ball is at a 0 depth, Z position, or your ball on the rail is going to be 105, and your rails are hard coded in at 110. Okay, so if you did want to shift these around, you could do it. There's no real harm in doing that, but again, the kit's going to know to put that ball at this depth when it's only interacting with the rails, and then it'll set it back down to that as soon as it's off the rails. So that actually does it. Now, you can see that this is really just a one-way ramp because we haven't put any entrances over here on this side of it. You could do that, okay, but the chances of you making it back up, there's really just not a flipper over here that's going to make it that easy to do. Okay, so let's watch this, and again, here's some screenplay of the iPhone version of it, and I'll just hit play on it, and there you go. Goes up the ramp, comes back down, and of course is now part of the usual gameplay again. And if you want to see it one more time, I think I got it a few times. There it is, right over there. So yoink, and back down again. Fun stuff, huh?